Incredible sign of the strength of our partnership was now being in a first look deal.
Things that make people feel, I was going to say good, but it's more than that. Things that make people feel. We have so many exciting things on this slate. I can't wait until we can announce them.
About to onboard a CEO and a small team to having Netflix as my partner.
I'm going to tell Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing. And that's just by Netflix.
The brand is an extension of my aesthetic.
The fucking grifters.
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have made enemies all over the world, but especially in Hollywood, where their reputation is hanging by a thread. The latest in the world of Meghan and Harry? Let's see. They're set to appear in Australia next month, where fans can buy a VIP experience ticket for over $3,000 to take a group table photo with Meghan and get the chance to hear her interviewed on stage.
Well, hello, you.
If we can go back to where we were, that's good. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, she has loved us so much.
Yep, $3,000 for that. Netflix has officially pulled out as an investor in As Ever, and well-placed sources spilled all the tea to Variety magazine about how fed up they are, how Meghan ghosts meetings due to being offended, how she steamrolls Harry in meetings, and how the co-CEO, Ted Sarandos, has commented on how he won't be speaking to Meghan without a lawyer present. And with the release of Tom Bower's new Betrayal book, set to be released at the end of this month, and all the burned bridges they're now stuck in the middle of, things are once again not looking too hot. Hey everyone, welcome back to Scandalous Media. It's Angela here, and I have one crazy video in store for you today, as Variety is the latest in a long list of Hollywood exposés on our favorite messy couple. Be sure to like and subscribe for new videos every single week, put those post notifications on so you don't miss the live chat premiere we do for every single video, and follow us on our social media. In Variety's hilarious cover story, we see Meghan depicted holding 4 plants, 3 of which represent Spotify, As Ever, and Netflix, and they're all dying as Harry stands to the side to water them. The only plant alive is Penguin Random House, which most likely depicts their book deal that has been disastrous ever since the release of Spare, although Harry reportedly got $40 million out of it. And next to Meghan is a bag labeled Royal Remedy, because all they've done is use their royal connections to get ahead while simultaneously pissing everyone off. It's a talent, truly. And that's the issue with Meghan and Harry. They make big promises, take millions, and when things go wrong, everything starts getting exposed in public. The last thing you want is to think you're on good terms with someone, and before you know it, they're selling you out to the public or crossing a line you didn't think they would. It's like thinking a conversation is happening behind closed doors, only to realize the door was wide open the entire time, and anyone walking by could hear everything. That's kind of how browsing the internet without protection can be. You assume your activity is private, but in reality, your data can be visible to internet providers, advertisers, or even hackers on the same Wi-Fi network. Speaking of privacy, thank you to Private Internet Access for sponsoring today's video. If you don't know what a VPN is, it stands for Virtual Private Network, and it basically acts like a secure tunnel for your internet connection. Think of it like sending your online activity through a private underground tunnel instead of a busy highway where anyone can look in and see what you're doing. Without a VPN, your internet provider, advertisers, or even hackers on public Wi-Fi can potentially see your activity. But Private Internet Access, or PIA, encrypts your connection, which helps protect your data, hide your IP address, and keep your browsing private. This is especially useful when you're using public Wi-Fi at places like airports, cafes, or hotels, because those networks are one of the easiest ways for cybercriminals to intercept your information. Another feature I personally love is being able to change your virtual location. Streaming services like Netflix have different libraries depending on the country, and sometimes shows are available in one region but not another. For example, one of my favorite shows, Pretty Little Liars, is not on Netflix in the US, but once you switch over to Canada using PIA VPN, you can stream freely. Plus, it works across all platforms, Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, and more. And one subscription protects unlimited devices at the same time, which is honestly huge. So if you want to protect your online privacy and unlock more content online, check out PIA using my link piavpn.com/scandalous and get 83% off your order, plus 4 extra months for free. Huge thanks to Private Internet Access for sponsoring today's video, and now back to a different type of danger: signing any sort of deal with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Variety exposes the Netflix nightmare. Variety magazine makes sure to mention that when Harry and Meghan first signed the deal with Netflix and Archwell Productions, they intended to produce scripted and unscripted films and series for all ages. They sold us this idea that they're going to produce inspiring, uplifting, and meaningful projects that were serious, impact-driven storytelling.
The work that you're going to put out into the business.
Things that make people feel, I was going to say good, but it's more than that. Things that make people feel something, right? And feel a sense of community, but we have so many exciting things on this slate. I can't wait until we can announce them, but
we're not going for perfect, we're going for real.
It's
and
so
loves
funny
it.
too that you keep saying Meghan Markle, you know I'm Sussex now.
But as Variety puts it, for the past 18 months, it has largely become a vehicle for Meghan Markle's consumer products brand as ever. On March 6th, it was announced that Netflix has officially backed out as an investor in As Ever, a brand that was launched just 11 months ago. A Netflix spokesperson told Variety that Meghan will take this next chapter on independently. Let's take our bets in the comments down below on when you think As Ever as a whole will get shut down now that Netflix is out and Meghan is in charge. A spokesperson for Meghan and Harry then tells Variety that they're grateful for their partnership and that we have experienced meaningful and rapid growth and As Ever is now ready to stand on its own. Typical Meg, always ready to jump with the defense of, well, we're doing incredible right now and we don't need anyone else. A theme we saw in the Aspire podcast and Meghan's Fortune Summit speech, where she emphasized this idea that things are going amazing and she's so successful and everyone needs her and she makes things successful. But as time showed, it was all a lie.
About to onboard a CEO and a small team to having Netflix as my partner, that takes it to a completely different level.
Meanwhile, an Archwell spokesperson told Us Weekly that no decisions have been made about when or where international expansion might take place, just that the brand is continuing to grow. And yet, if it's growing so much, why not expand internationally? The Netflix partnership Meghan tried to present as unshakable was crumbling beneath the weight of lies, empty promises, and inflated success. And I say inflated success because when you are Anna Delveying your way through this business, or even worse, being another Elizabeth Holmes, people's livelihoods get wrapped up in it because they're relying on you to actually deliver on the promises you made. So when the deadline hits and there's nothing to show for it, because you have nothing to show for it, well, that's when shit hits the fan, and Lord is it swinging right now. Last March, Ted Sarandis defended Meghan, telling Variety that she's influential, that she sells out everything from the shoes she wears to the Hermes blanket featured in the trailer for their little Netflix soap opera. And that right there shows me that Ted was talking to Meghan, and she was still trying to revive this so-called Meghan effect that no longer exists.
There's this thing known as the Meghan effect.
Yeah. So if you
Yeah.
couldn't hear me,
how could I be heard through what I was wearing?
The selling out of outfits and short-lived moments of influence only existed when she first got engaged to Harry and people were still tuned into the shiny new thing. But she ruined that when she exploited everyone for her own gain. The only effect we see now is everyone distancing themselves and divesting from the train wreck that is Meghan and Harry. And now, Ted needs a lawyer, as we'll see. Variety spoke to 6 well-placed sources with knowledge of the Netflix nightmare and the Sussexes, who say that their union has been far from a fairy tale. The Sussexes' perceived pattern of selling repackaged versions of the same story about their exit from royal life has exhausted Netflix. And that right there is exactly what I've been calling out for years, so if you haven't subscribed yet, definitely do it now. Even though the Netflix deal isn't totally dead yet, Variety writes that their partnership may continue to taper off. The mood in the building is, we're done, one Netflix insider tells Variety of the vibe on Harry and Meghan. They also pointed out that their bedside manner in meetings has been rubbing people the wrong way, and on top of that, the ratings for With Love Meghan flopped, which made Netflix question if leaning into e-commerce with them is even a smart move. While another Netflix insider tried to downplay the ratings, saying that they're on par with other lifestyle shows, that wasn't the only issue at hand. Variety writes, 3 insiders say Netflix chief Ted Sarandis is fed up with the pair, whom Meghan and Harry reportedly text directly. I love that they're so high and mighty they'd rather talk to the CEO directly instead of an intern, but the cherry on top is that they're delivering nothing in the same breath. How poetic. Variety writes that the chief content officer Bella Bajaria has grown weary of the Sussex deal, which makes her next statements a little interesting. Because despite all that, a Netflix spokesperson is claiming it is absolutely inaccurate that Sarandis and Bajaria have lost faith in the couple. And then Bajaria herself jumps in to defend them, saying, Archewell has been a thoughtful and collaborative partner, and we've really enjoyed working with Harry and Meghan.
They're deeply engaged in the storytelling process and bring a unique global perspective that aligns with the kinds of impactful projects our members respond to.
Which is funny, since everyone at Netflix is complaining about the ratings, the fact that they've been repackaging the same story every other week, the fact that they promised impactful projects and all we got was a tea spill gone wrong on the royal family, and Meghan cosplaying as a wannabe first-time royal influencer. So, what impactful projects are people responding to? And notice how she is quoted directly in this interview, which shows me that it's someone Meghan and Harry got to vouch for them. A rookie mistake, because an ally of theirs is a dangerous game. Even though insiders say that Ted and his wife Nicole Avant socialize frequently with the disastrous duo since they're neighbors in Montecito, two sources insist that Sarandis recently said he would not sit for a call with the Duchess unless a lawyer was present on the line. The sources were unclear if he was serious or joking, and a Netflix spokesperson, who's probably Meghan in a wig again, says that it is absolutely inaccurate that he made that comment. Meghan was quick to get her lawyer involved. Michael J. Kump wrote Variety a letter saying, "This is blatantly false. In fact, Meghan texts and speaks with Mr. Sarandis regularly and has been to his home without lawyers." Now, how would Meghan know if Ted made that lawyer comment before or not? It's clear they had his trust beforehand. He was defending her and claiming that Hermes of all brands was aided by Meghan in selling out that blanket. But things have changed, and everyone probably clowns Ted Sarandis for even giving her a chance.
Turns out Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will still get paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing. And that's just by Netflix.
That was 2 years ago, by the way. So Netflix continued to give them a chance, and Meghan and Harry continued to clown them. Variety writes that Season 2 of With Love Meghan performed dismally compared to the first round, and that Netflix was sitting on a surplus of as-ever products, including tea and baking mixes totaling more than $10 million in value, so much so that the company started giving inventory to employees for free, putting the goods on card tables in various office buildings.
Yikes.
An Archewell spokesperson was quick to jump to their defense, saying, well,
giveaways from sample closets are standard practice at studios.
Okay, and is sitting on a surplus of $10 million worth of products that aren't selling also a standard practice? They're so quick to jump to their defense instead of learning from the obvious issues at hand. A different Netflix source says that the plan was always to spin As Ever back into Archewell's control and that the streamer only intended to assist in its launch. But it's not like Meghan had no control. She had complete control over the aesthetics and idea, as she quickly boasted about in interviews.
The brand is an extension of my aesthetic, but it's more than that. The operational side is so key, and I am constantly looking at
ways in which we can, how do we adjust our margins? What does our spend look like? Really going through P&L. So I think from my standpoint, it's really all of it holistically.
However, Netflix was funding it. Is she really going to pretend like the plan was always to lose Netflix's money?
I don't think there's any founder in year one that would say something differently, not if they had the ambition to scale in the way that I do.
Variety says With Love Meghan hasn't been fully renewed, while Meghan and Harry spokesperson tries to spin it as a seasonal specials. And yet Variety adds that Netflix's disenchantment is not a recent phenomenon, which basically tells you this has been an issue for a while. Variety reflects on their agenda, saying that when they first moved to the US in 2020, they were pitching themselves as the next big entertainment empire, taking meetings with everyone from Disney to Apple to NBC. But the industry didn't want them. It wanted the tea on their royal exit. And that alone probably irks Meghan to her core, because she clearly saw herself, and likely pitched herself, as someone capable, someone with a lot to offer on her own. Meanwhile, Variety is basically like, girl, everyone just wanted the tea. And the worst part is, if Meghan was actually creative and had real ideas to offer, this could have worked out great. Imagine if she was capable of producing a binge-worthy action show? I wouldn't be a hater. But the issue is, she couldn't, and yet was forcing herself on everyone. But the general public doesn't care for jam from a privileged ex-royal. But there was competition to secure Meghan and Harry at the time because people still had hope for them. The CEO of Warner Bros. Discovery was trying to land them, but Sarandis competitively swooped in and secured a 5-year exclusive deal believed to be worth $100 million, although Variety says two sources put that number closer to $60 million. But here's where it gets messy, because Netflix's issue wasn't just the lack of results, it was how Meghan and Harry were operating behind the scenes. Meghan and Harry betraying Netflix. According to multiple sources, what Netflix didn't expect was that massive Oprah interview back in March 2021. Now, technically, Meghan and Harry didn't break any rules. Their deal allowed them to do outside interviews and projects, but that's not really the issue here. The problem was communication, or lack of it, because insiders say Netflix was annoyed and only found out at the last minute that they were about to sit down with Oprah and spill all these intimate headline-making details. Of course, Meghan and Harry's spokesperson is denying that, calling it categorically false, that Netflix was unaware, and adding that lawyers from both sides were involved in overseeing the deal, which is standard in Hollywood. But regardless of who knew what, the timing clearly rubbed people the wrong way. Netflix had just invested heavily in them, and suddenly, their biggest, most valuable story was handed to someone else. Variety writes that Netflix didn't step in. They were still very much in the honeymoon phase, and the interview ended up pulling in a massive 17.1 million viewers on CBS. A win for Oprah, but a loss for Netflix and Meghan and Harry, who were ripped apart for their lies, none of which they apologized for, by the way. I covered that craziness at the time, as well as a breakdown of all 6 episodes from their Netflix show, so be sure to catch up on that timeless tea. Watching it now is probably hilarious, seeing how it all played out. Of course, after the Oprah interview, there was chatter in the book world for a tell-all memoir from the Spare himself. Variety writes that, learning from the Winfrey experience, Netflix approached the couple to discuss how a potential book deal would impact the release of the docuseries. Sources say Meghan downplayed the auction, telling Sarandis that any publication would be far in the future if it happened at all. So she lied to his face, saying there is no book deal. Of course, her spokesperson calls this categorically untrue. There was open communication with Netflix months before release to coordinate timing between the book and the series. If that was the case, why wouldn't Netflix jump in to be involved with the book first? You know, considering these two clowns were giving away all the material that Netflix originally invested in to other sources. That was essentially killing their deal with Netflix, because why would anyone tune into a story that has been regurgitating in the media for a while? Whether that was with Oprah, Spare, or any other interview they were giving, it's going to look like Netflix was getting scraps, which they kinda did. And then in spring 2021, it happened again. According to sources, Netflix was blindsided, this time by the news that Penguin Random House was moving forward with Harry's memoir Spare and planning to release it right as Netflix was rolling out Harry and Meghan. Now, one version of events says that Sarandis was actually caught off guard during a random run-in with a Penguin executive and was pretty riled up hearing about it that way. But Netflix insiders are pushing back on that, saying he never had that kind of interaction in the first place. Either way, Penguin formally announced the book in July 2021 with a late 2022 release date, and of course, they had no comment on any of this. But again, it's the pattern. Another major project, another moment where Netflix is left out of the loop while their biggest assets are being used somewhere else. So once that book situation came to light, sources say Netflix moved fast. They pushed to get Harry and Meghan fully released before Spare even hit shelves, and Penguin actually shifted the book's release to January 2023, and Harry got $40 million from that deal. Now, Netflix insiders are saying that the plan was always to drop the docuseries in December 2022, but 2 other sources claim that timeline was absolutely adjusted to get ahead of the memoir. At the same time, production on Harry and Meghan itself was anything but smooth, if you recall. Lana Wilson, who directed Taylor Swift's Miss Americana, was initially brought in, but no official deal was ever finalized, and her team says that she was never formally attached. Then, Garrett Bradley came on board briefly. Of course, she had a bunch of issues with Meghan, who insisted on not filming in the real house and wanting to take all the footage together, which kind of ended up happening because she had all that vertical content posted on Netflix. Of course, an Archewell source is denying that Garrett Bradley was ever engaged as a director in the first place, even though it was all over the news and I had covered that drama when it first came out. Eventually, Sarandis had to step in personally and bring in Oscar-nominated director Liz Garbus to take over the project. And while things between her and the couple were said to be smooth during production, that didn't exactly last once they hit post-production. According to 2 sources, Meghan actually asked director Liz Garbus to remove certain parts from the final cut, saying some interviews and footage would be upsetting to the royal family, especially since Queen Elizabeth had passed just 2 months before the release and they were still in a period of mourning.
Sure, Jan.
Now, Liz Garbus didn't comment on that, but internally at Netflix, some executives had their own interpretation. Sources say there was a feeling that the real reason behind those requests was to hold back certain details so Harry's upcoming memoir could keep the exclusive revelations for his publisher. Crazy work. Of course, Netflix is pushing back on that, with the spokesperson calling that characterization not accurate. I feel like Netflix is trying to make themselves look like they aren't clowns in the deal because it honestly looked like Meghan and Harry were truly running the ship here. But then you have two other sources saying Netflix leadership actually stepped in and encouraged Garbus to do one final interview with Meghan and Harry, specifically to make sure that the events discussed in the book were also included in the series. They were reportedly strongly advised to deliver Harry and Meghan in a way that maximized the value of the show, and according to sources, they agreed. And in the end, despite all the back and forth, the series still became a big hit for Netflix. But of course, that didn't last too long for Meghan and Harry. From hype to industry joke, no one wants to work with you. Variety exposes that Netflix wasn't alone in this and that parts of the entertainment industry began to sour on the couple, which of course is a reference to their doomed Spotify deal, a company that now clearly regrets ever giving them the time of day. Having delivered only archetypes with Spotify in a deal that was originally finalized with the idea that Harry would also be involved, Spotify's head of talk strategy, Bill Simmons, famously called them
the f***ing grifters.
The year before, in a January 2022 episode, Bill Simmons said, "You live in f***ing Montecito and you just sell documentaries and podcasts and nobody cares what you have to say about anything unless you talk about the royal family and you just complain about them." Despite the initial hype with the release of Harry and Meghan that brought, quote, renewed optimism, Variety points out that still Harry and Meghan struggle to connect with Hollywood's creative community. A-list talent and directors were hesitant to work with the pair, sources say. Perceptions were shifting in the industry and across the US thanks to comments like Simmons and similar remarks from then United Talent Agency CEO Jeremy Zimmer. At a 2023 conference in Cannes, Zimmer had said, "Turns out Meghan Markle was not a great audio talent or necessarily any kind of talent. Just because you're famous doesn't make you great at something." Basically, they lost the industry's trust and their reputation was horrible. Most of the projects they initially pitched, like Meghan's scripted animated series Pearl, about a time-traveling girl who meets famous women throughout history, were scrapped. Development turnaround is common in Hollywood, yet the Sussexes have not produced a single scripted project in their nearly 6 years at Netflix, Variety wrote. And that right there is the core issue their fans, or anyone who thinks all criticism of them is racist, completely miss, especially when Meghan herself has a pattern of falling out with women of color, but that's a whole other video. Variety reports that even though she signed with talent agency WME in April 2023 in hopes of boosting her image and credibility in the industry, agency sources say that she was mainly focused on building as ever. Now here's where it gets hilarious because truly, Meghan, how unbearable are you to deal with? Within 3 months of Meghan becoming a client, key members of the team assembled to represent her at WME dropped her account. The two being Ari Emanuel, who is literally the CEO, and Brad Slater, who's a big power agent who works with the Kardashians. Now she's with Jill Smoller, who's Serena Williams' longtime agent, which is interesting because Jill Smoller is more sports branding focused and not your typical Hollywood power deal closer. Meghan had the CEO on her team, and even he stepped back, which is a common theme we see with her. It's not that people don't give her a chance, it's that she's a constant disappointment who in the past has been difficult to work with, was reported to be condescending to staff, and literally described as a bully and a dictator in heels as exposed by The Hollywood Reporter in 2024. But despite all the ongoing issues and the release of Harry and Meghan, Netflix constantly stepped in to clean things up. After Archewell's production head, Ben Browning, left in 2023, Netflix came back with what they call renewed vigor, which is just a fancy way of saying they started getting way more involved. By 2024, they were helping shape Archewell's next phase, even pushing them to focus on acquiring projects instead of creating their own, which kind of tells you everything about how much confidence is actually there. It's basically saying, okay, well, clearly you can't create or produce anything like you initially promised us, so at this point, just go out and find projects we can fund. And that explains why they went out and bought the rights to Meet Me at the Lake and The Wedding Date in 2023 to develop for Netflix. But clearly, that's not going too well either, because a Hollywood source tells Page 6 that both projects are now stuck in limbo, adding that 3 years in development for a movie like this at Netflix isn't good. And 4 sources tell Variety that sales agents and filmmakers are not interested in any Archewell involvement. In fact, this upcoming story is so embarrassing, it's actually borderline sad. So Archewell was actively trying to get involved in projects like Skywalkers, A Love Story, and the Christopher Reeve documentary Superman, but nothing actually came out of it. In fact, the Superman doc ended up going to Warner Bros. DC Films for $15 million, which according to 3 sources was actually less than what Archewell was willing to pay. So even when Meghan and Harry were offering more money, they still weren't chosen. As for Skywalkers, Netflix picked it up for its main film library, but sources say the deal makers had no interest in bringing Archewell in as a second partner. And the writer-producer of the film, Jeff Zimbalist, even told Variety that neither the couple nor Archewell was ever mentioned to producers during the bidding process. Basically, working with them wasn't even an option. Now, of course, Netflix is denying parts of this, calling the idea that they were rejected at Sundance categorically untrue. But then you have another source familiar with how Netflix handles acquisitions, basically explaining that Archewell would only be brought in if they actually added value to a project. And in the case of the Skywalkers and Superman deal, that just wasn't the case. I think Netflix keeps denying this because it's clear that Meghan and Harry played them like a fiddle, and yet not once did Netflix ever step up and call them out. And it looks bad on Netflix's part because how are you a veteran streamer giant and you're getting played by these two who clearly have a bad rep? Variety writes, by March 2025, it was clear that Netflix and Archewell had changed direction. With scripted projects failing to materialize, it was time to reconsider the partnership. Prince Harry was not nearly as visible in projects after the 2024 debut of Polo, a 5-episode unscripted series about his friend and athlete Nacho Figueres. It was time to test Meghan's mettle as an entrepreneur and a solo star. As I said at the beginning of the video, Sarandis believed in Meghan and the story she likely gave about how she sells at everything she simply touches. But even then, he admitted that Netflix was basically taking a back seat when it came to As Ever, calling it a big discovery model for us, which is just a fancy way of saying they were experimenting. Despite With Love Meghan debuting in the Netflix top 10, it ranked at number 383 in the data dump for the first half of the year. Not to mention that season 2 did significantly worse, not even making the top 1,000. It ranked at 1,217 if you were wondering. Deadline says that it's likely not to return for a season 3, despite the damage control Meghan's team is running with, saying it'll return for like seasonal specials. The holiday special couldn't break the top 1,000 either, coming in at 1,015 on the list. By last August, things had clearly shifted and they signed a new deal with Netflix, but it wasn't the same. It got downgraded from an exclusive agreement to a first look deal, which meant that Meghan and Harry can still create projects, but Netflix is no longer obligated to fund or produce them. I made an entire video discussing that drama. It's basically, we'll take a look and decide if it's worth it. And when it comes to this topic, you could tell that it makes them a little salty, with their sources defensively telling Variety that this is common and happens with other talent deals, including the Obamas.
Once that had come to its term, the extension of it, which was such an incredible sign of the strength of our partnership, was now being in a first look deal.
But the Obamas didn't keep Netflix waiting for years on promised impactful and inspiring projects that ultimately went nowhere. Even the documentary that Meghan and Harry executively produced, Cookie Queens, struggled to land a sale after Sundance, only getting picked up by roadside attractions almost 2 months later, and Netflix didn't even touch it. And when they announced the downgraded deal, Chief Content Officer Bella Bajaria came out with a supportive quote and even made sure to name drop As Ever to make it seem like things were going great. But now, Netflix is jumping ship, saying that the whole thing was highly experimental for them since they don't really have experience in retail. Basically, we're just experimenting here because the original plan of making the content they claimed they would didn't work out, and now we're trying to make a few pennies back. But unfortunately, with Netflix pledging their allegiance to As Ever, it meant that more of Netflix's corporate resources would be allocated to Archewell, and the company's vast staff would interact more with Meghan and Harry.
No! God, please, no! No!
Variety writes, the Sussex's bedside manner was not well received by some inside the streamer. Flopping, yet still having an attitude. Here's where Variety gets into Meghan and Harry's dynamic, and as expected, Meghan is dominating and Harry is basically her assistant. Variety writes that insiders say Meghan has always carried herself like Hollywood is her domain, and in meetings, whether virtual or in person, she tends to talk over Harry or recast his thoughts, sometimes while he's literally mid-sentence, usually with a little touch on the arm or thigh.
It's education, right? It's education. And I think all of us can stand behind the value and the importance of education, especially having access to it.
But the access to it and what it is can now come in different shapes and forms, and you can still show up in the world in such a strong and valuable way, even if you don't take the more traditional route.
If you've watched any of my videos covering Meghan and Harry's trips where we see Meghan assert dominance and try to control Harry through touch or by directing him constantly, then you're probably familiar with this. It's just funny that Netflix staff also caught on to it. Now, of course, her lawyer, Michael Kump, pushed back on that, saying this claim seems calculated to play into the misogynistic characterization of her bossing her husband around, and Harry himself also denies it, calling it categorically false. Racism, misogyny, feminism, everything is an excuse as to why she's unlikable, unprofessional, and rude. Variety writes, Meghan also had odd methods of providing feedback according to 3 sources. She was known to disappear for long periods during Zoom calls, the sources say. Later, Netflix teams like the marketing department would be informed that her absence was due to her being offended by something that was said. So she would ghost meetings and then have her team go around telling people that they offended her. Of course, her lawyer jumped to her defense, saying that Meghan works from home, is the mother of young children aged 4 and 6.
You know, our kids are 4 and 6, and so because Archie and Lily are just 3 and 5.
We have 2 little ones. They are now 4 and 6.
Archie and Lily are just 6 and 4 years old. Can't believe it. Our kids are really young, 2.5 and 4.5.
Our kids are young. They're 3 and 5. They're amazing.
He basically continues, saying that because she works at home with young children, she often encounters children who enter the space unexpectedly during a meeting, and that Meghan is conscious of shielding her team from the distraction of children. Nearly all professionals can attest to needing to turn off the audio or camera during a virtual meeting at some point during many hours of virtual business calls. I genuinely cannot believe what I'm reading. Meghan, clearly using her lawyer as a mouthpiece, is trying to hide behind being a mother here, and it's kind of ridiculous. No one cares if your kid walks into a Zoom, that happens to everyone. What people are questioning is why you're disappearing from meetings and then having your team tell others it's because you were offended. Those are 2 completely different things. And then she throws in this whole shielding her team from the distraction of children angle. Notice the wording. Oh, here comes our holy savior Meghan, who is desperately trying to prove how hands-on and selfless she is, instead of just addressing what people are actually calling out. Variety ends this scandalous tea spill saying that consumer response to both the series and As Ever was mixed. Archewell claimed that it sold out its inventory, while Newsweek reported in January that a glitch on the company's website revealed a high volume of unsold products.
And I had this incredible fortune of having every SKU sell out within under an hour. With that first sellout, we said, great, let's 10x the inventory. We'll get all the metrics that we need. And then it sold out within 4 hours.
After the second batch of With Love episodes cratered, which is just a nice way of saying it flopped, sources say the writing was on the wall that Netflix was losing faith in the former royals. While news of Netflix's divestment in the brand only hit days ago, 2 sources say it had been in the works since last fall. That's when Meghan hired independent brand consultant and creative director Devin Pedswater, who previously worked with Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, which Variety says signaled to several sources that Netflix had essentially thrown in the towel on her venture. And then the article closes on this. After half a decade of inconsistent shows, strategic shifts, false starts, and a diminished hold on the popular imagination, are the Sussexes really living the Hollywood dream they imagined? Lies exposed and using the kids after costing Netflix millions. Now that everything is going south, what does Meghan do? Bam! Here's a promotional picture of Lily to sell those flowers for $255.
Are you having fun, my love? Archie.
We see Lily's back in one photo, and in another, she's sitting under the table as the world's first ever mother is working diligently on some flowers. Page 6 writes that, inside Netflix, there are many who are happy to talk about what really went down. Netflix put millions behind this deal, and I don't think they saw a return whatsoever. They just cut a loss, claimed one company insider. There were a lot of people who really did not enjoy working with Meghan on With Love, admitted another staffer, adding, "There is no love lost between many at Netflix and Markle and her and Harry's Archwell production company." While Meghan claims that the plan was always for As Ever to stand on its own 2 feet, Netflix sources insist that the announcement about severing ties came as a shock to staffers. One staffer said, "Why ever in the world would Netflix put all this money into the deal and then say the plan was to let it go after 11 months? You can try to spin it whatever way you want, but it's just not true." So it's basically an excuse that Meghan is using now, even though she made it clear that she expected a long partnership with Netflix and just 5 months ago lied saying that it was this strong partnership.
Such a incredible sign of the strength of our partnership.
Meanwhile, the whole time they're trying to get rid of her. And in April 2025, she told Fortune magazine about their deal with Netflix, saying that "We are very, very much in harmony on how we see the growth of this and the trajectory over the next 5 to 7 years.
Let's just laugh at him now.
This is the same person who is now claiming that Netflix was going to hold her back. A well-placed industry insider told Page Six that, "Honestly, there are people within Netflix who would rather not work with Meghan and Harry. They are fed up. But Ted always wanted to give them one more chance." Still, ultimately, Meghan and Ted don't have a relationship like they used to. And after all of this, I don't think anyone wants to have a relationship with Meghan and Harry. Who in their right mind would? What do you guys think? Well, that's all for today's video. Let's take bets on where we think Meghan and Harry will be by the end of this year. Be sure to check out Pia VPN using my link below or QR code here to get 83% off plus 4 months for free. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to like and subscribe for new videos every single week. Follow us on our social media, and as ever, I'll see you next time.